The medieval age, spanning roughly from the 5th to the 15th century in Europe, was a period characterized by distinct cultural, societal, and technological norms. Hygiene practices during this time were markedly different from modern standards, often considered unclean and unsanitary by today's measures. While not all individuals in the medieval era practiced unhygienic habits, a significant portion of the population was subject to various unsanitary conditions. This article explores 8 such practices and conditions that were common during the medieval age. 1. Limited bathing. One of the most striking aspects of medieval hygiene practices was the limited frequency of bathing. In contrast to the modern emphasis on daily or regular bathing, many people during this era would bathe only a few times a year, if at all. There were several reasons for this. Firstly, bathing was often associated with Roman and Greek decadence, which many medieval Europeans sought to distance themselves from. Additionally, heating water for a bath was a labor-intensive process that often required a considerable amount of wood or other fuels, making it a luxury that only the wealthy could afford. Furthermore, there was a belief that hot water and bathing could open the pores and make the body susceptible to illness, which discouraged frequent bathing. As a result, poor personal hygiene and a lack of cleanliness were widespread. 2. Lack of sanitation. The lack of effective sanitation systems was a significant issue during the medieval age. Most cities and towns lacked proper sewage systems, and waste disposal methods were rudimentary at best. Chamber pots, which were containers used for urination and defecation, were commonly used and emptied in the streets or disposed of in open pits. This contributed to the unsanitary conditions in urban areas and facilitated the spread of diseases. The stench and filth in many medieval cities were notorious, and the concept of urban planning, as we understand it today, was virtually non-existent. 3. Flea-infested bedding. Medieval bedding and linens were rarely cleaned by modern standards, and this led to infestations of fleas, bedbugs, and other parasites. Mattresses and pillows were typically filled with straw, feathers, or other natural materials, which provided a comfortable habitat for these pests. The lack of hygiene in bedding and the prevalence of vermin contributed to the spread of diseases and discomfort for those trying to get a good night's sleep. It is worth noting that these issues affected both the wealthy and the common people. 4. Primitive dental care. Dental hygiene during the medieval age was minimal. Toothbrushes and toothpaste, as we understand them today, did not exist. Most people had no access to dental care or preventive measures, and dental problems were widespread. The combination of poor diet, lack of dental care, and limited understanding of oral health contributed to the prevalence of dental issues in this period. Tooth decay and gum disease were common, and it was not uncommon for people to lose their teeth at a relatively young age. 5. Crowded living conditions. Overcrowding was a significant issue during the medieval age. Many individuals and families lived in small, cramped spaces, often with multiple generations sharing a single room or dwelling. These crowded living conditions facilitated the spread of diseases, as close contact with infected individuals made it easier for illnesses to be transmitted within communities. Additionally, limited ventilation and inadequate waste disposal in such close quarters exacerbated unsanitary living conditions. 6. Lack of personal hygiene products. Modern personal hygiene products, such as soap, shampoo, and deodorant were not widely available during the medieval age. Soap, for example, was a luxury item that only the affluent could afford. The lack of such products made it challenging for individuals to maintain personal cleanliness. People relied on rudimentary methods like washing their hands with water and scraping their skin with a dull knife or a rough cloth. Perfumes and scents were often used to mask body odors, but they did not address the underlying hygiene issues. 7. Limited knowledge of germ theory. During the medieval age, the understanding of the connection between germs and diseases was rudimentary or non-existent. The prevailing theories of disease were often based on superstition. Miasma theory, the belief that diseases were caused by bad air, or the influence of the planets and stars. As a result, there was a lack of effective disease prevention measures. The absence of knowledge about the importance of sanitation and hand-washing in preventing the spread of diseases contributed to the prevalence of illnesses during this time. 8. Use of potentially contaminated water. Access to clean and safe drinking water was limited in many parts of medieval Europe. People often had to rely on water sources that were potentially contaminated with disease-causing microorganisms. Rivers, streams, and wells were the primary sources of water, and the quality of these sources varied widely. Waterborne diseases, such as cholera and dysentery, were a significant health concern due to the lack of proper filtration and purification methods. In conclusion, the hygiene practices and living conditions during the medieval age were influenced by the knowledge and resources available at the time. While not all individuals adhered to these unhygienic practices, many aspects of daily life in this era would be considered unsanitary by today's standards. It's essential to understand the historical context and the limitations of the time when examining these practices and conditions. The development of modern sanitation and hygiene practices has greatly improved public health and living standards, highlighting the importance of progress in these areas over the centuries.